Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class, we're going to be going over the last set of chapters for Magician's Gambit. So we are finishing this up today and transitioning on to Castle of Wizardry. Yes. So we're finishing up this today, and we're going to be moving on to Castle of Wizardry, and we will talk about that a little bit more in the middle of the class. So before we go ahead and jump in with what's at the rest of this book, let's go ahead and go over our trivia. Thank you again to everyone who participated as always. I always appreciate seeing the answers and your guesses, and congratulations to everyone who got it right. This week's answer was Reepicheep, and I had 3 correct answers, one from Paul, one from Brendan, and one from Landon. So congratulations, you guys, on getting it right, and thanks again to everyone who participates with me. If you yourself would like to participate with the trivia question, you can go over to the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. It is on the right-hand side. If you scroll down just a tiny little bit on desktop, and on mobile, it'll be almost all the way at the bottom, and you'll be able to see it and answer it, and then you will find out if you got it correct or not. Again, thanks to everyone who participates. I always really appreciate you playing with me, and it is a lot of fun, so thanks. Okay, let's go ahead and jump right in today with our recap. So this is chapters 22 through the end, and we started 22 right off of a little bit of a cliffhanger from the last set of chapters. So Yarblick explains that Silk has been captured and put in this pit, and he explains to them exactly what the pit is and what it looks like and how he is being kept. So he offers them a way to escape with him by leaving with his party in the middle of the night. However, Relg steps up and says that he is convinced that he can get Silk out of his cave-like cage, where it is a hole in the ground. So he does actually save Silk by going in through the rocks and using his ability, and ends up being able to pull Silk out of the rocks with him. So they save Silk and end up continuing on their journey, riding away as fast as they can, and they escape and continue heading on to Cothelmurgos. The group travels through a lot of different types of hard terrains. They end up having to build their own shelter at a couple times, and there is the perilous quicksand area that they've been on, and they do see the tremor, or do experience the tremors from the volcano that is erupting far away. So a lot of different terrains they have to kind of manage and get through. So it's not the most easy journey in order to get to Cothelmurgos. But once they do reach the mountain that Cothelmurgos is built on, Relg does help them climb the inside of the mountain through these channels that go straight up, though not 100% straight up, but go up through the mountain, just kind of zigzagging, and he helps create holes for them to be able to climb up those mountains and get to the city that is at the top. On their way up, though, they do meet an escaped slave that is a Morag woman, who is exhausted, on the verge of death, and they do help her and tell her that they will be on their way back for her when they come back. They will pick her up, and though she is convinced she'll be dead by the time they come back, but they are convinced that they will be able to save her. Her name is Tabia, so their goal is to be able to get her on the way back. And after they end up reaching the city, so they continue going up after they talk to the Tabia for a little bit, they end up reaching the city, and in disguise they infiltrate it and the temple. They sneak in to Kuthik's room. I think that's how you say it, Kuthik's. And Belgariad and him do battle. They end up engaging in a wizard's battle, throwing magic at each other, until Kuchik thinks that Garon is going to get the orb because the little boy is planning to hand it to him, and he tries to unmake the orb, which ends up unmaking him instead, which allows them to then end up with the boy and the orb. So, pretty interesting ending that we've got here. We have succeeded. The main goal that they have been doing or been working towards from Book 1, Pawn of Prophecy, we've got the orb in hand. And so we've got one victory down, and we're going to see what comes next after this, since obviously we know things are not going to be 100% after this. So they did recover the orb, but then what is the next step for that? They've been obviously gathering these people for the prophecy and what is included in order to beat Torak. So there's obviously 2 more books and a long ways to go still. But it's a nice ending to have where we have some victory, even if it was a very surprising victory based on how it occurred. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with talking about Relg. We talked about him in the last set of chapters as well, because Relg was kind of the forefront of those chapters, and I feel like in this one we discussed who he was or who he is and how he is presented at the start of meeting him, because we did just meet him in the last set of chapters. He did just join their group. However, I do feel like we should talk about him again, because we had the one chunk of chapters where he was one way, and then this set of chapters really presents him in a different way. And so he kind of progresses pretty quickly throughout this time that they're together. And he really kind of becomes more of a companion to everybody than a nuisance to everybody. And we see that right at the start of these chapters, and the fact that he is willing to step up and save Silk. So Silk has been thrown in this pit, and he doesn't have any complaints about saving him. He doesn't, ask if somebody else should save him. He doesn't do anything of that. Instead, he instantly asks Yarblek to describe where Silk is being held, all the details, so that way he can figure out if he's going to be able to go in and save him. Doesn't have to be asked to save him. He's the one that says, hey, I can get Silk out. I can do this. We don't need to worry about magic and trying to, locate him over here like they were originally planning to do. He instantly steps up, says he's going to save Silk, and not only that, but then he is correct in the fact that they do go over to where Silk is being kept, and he does end up being able to go through the rock, collect Silk, and bring him back out through the rock. So everyone really is impressed by this, by the fact that it wasn't a struggle in order for him to even be willing to save Silk, but that he steps right up, he helps them out when they need it, and he doesn't even, complain about his virtue. He doesn't complain about doing it. He doesn't have any concerns about doing it. He just steps up, says he's going to do it, and he follows through. So that is really, really good, and also really surprising for the whole group, and it helps him become more of a comrade in that moment, because he actually is able to step up and hold his weight and do what needs to be done without being a pain in the booty to do it. So it's really, really a defining moment for Relg and the group as a whole, even though Silk is not quite happy that he was saved in that manner. He did not like it at all. And then he is willing and seemingly unsorry about killing people, which I think is very interesting, is that we go from this Relg who is trying to be very virtuous, doesn't want to touch anybody, doesn't want to deal with anything, is constantly praying, constantly complaining about how he feels like he is not virtuous enough. And in this one, we don't hear that many complaints from him. We do hear some minor complaints about things, but not a lot about, having to specifically pray on the ground or, to stop and to do things. He does tell people not to touch him a little bit, but then he's picking up people and shoving them through rocks and killing them, or sinking them into the ground or whatever else. And I think that that's very interesting, is that you would think he would have a problem with doing this, with killing other people and, burying them in the rocks, but he, in the midst of battle, he just grabs them and just shoves them into the rock and is like, hey, done. We're good. Let's move on. So it seems very interesting to have this shift in Relg, where before it seemed like he didn't want to have anything to do with anything, and now after this one defining moment where he steps up to the plate and then he's like, okay, I got this, let's just go and defeat enemies and I'll just throw them through rocks and it's fine. They'll die there. It's good. And he has to touch them in order to do that. And so you'd think, with his whole no touchy policy, even to save Silk had to wrap his arms and legs around him. So it really is definitely a big shift from where he was to how he is now. The only thing that we really see him, continue to be set in his mindset is when he meets Taiba, and she is, fairly naked and is a woman. And definitely his sexism comes out, where he feels like she's just trying to tempt him, trying to make him unvirtuous, especially with her undressed state. Even though she has just escaped from slavery and is dying on the ground, he's like, well, you should still be able to cover yourself up and be, more virtuous than just laying around like that. So definitely doesn't quite get there to a total transformation, but I feel like even this short amount of time with the companions and from where we see him to start with and how he is in this set of chapters, it's a very quick turnaround. It's very much where he grows fairly quickly. He's still afraid of the sky. He still, can't see, and that's also just because, he's used to living in caves, so that's more of a physical, what's the term? Condition or physical disability. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not quite coming up, but you get what I mean by that. Those were kind of similar to what I was thinking about. So it's not totally his fault that he can't, really see very well in the sunlight. But yeah, so I feel like he doesn't totally change in these set of chapters because he does have some of those typical Relg problems from the first set of chapters that we read with him, but we do definitely see a very big difference in how he is with his comrades, how his mentality is for the general journey and his part in it, and that kind of stuff. So we do start to see these good changes happening for Relg, and it's really refreshing not to have to hear about him constantly telling Garon how crappy everything is and how he's sullied him because of having thoughts or by wanting to do this or actions he's done. So he has grown up some, and that is refreshing to see, even especially so quickly of a time. Another thing I really like about this set of chapters is I feel like we've kind of gone a little bit back to basics and done some more world building. So even though we're 3 books in and we know a lot about this world and its limitations, what kind of things go on during it and stuff like that, I still feel like at this set of chapters during our traveling, we get a little bit more world building, a little bit more complexity to this world, some things that we didn't already know and are a little bit more unusual than just, we're in a different city with a different set of culture and stuff like that. So one thing that we had is that during their travels, they did pass this beach that has a whole bunch of dead sea monsters buried in the sand on the beach. Their skeletons have obviously long past been, decaying and stuff like that. But interestingly enough, that we know now that there were sea monsters at once before the sea ended up drying up a little bit, and making it so they all got beached in and died on the beach. So there are these huge monsters, and this is the kind of world that would have these kind of sea monsters. And it's also the world where these sea monsters have passed, where they're no longer part of this world and they're no longer a concern for people and not have to go into those waters and stuff like that. So definitely super interesting, especially since we've seen only bits and pieces of like monsters and unique fantasy type creatures. We don't see them all the time. We see little bits here and there when they have to face them. So it's kind of cool to see another facet of monsters or creatures that are in this world, and now they've been extinct. And this is a creature that we now see that is extinct from this world. So it's very interesting, a little bit of history and a little bit of more knowledge to add a little bit more depth and reality, I guess, to this world. Another one is that we've passed through some pretty interesting terrains. They've gone through areas with dunes and wind and quicksand, and they had to be very careful not to fall into the quicksand. Relg had to be led because his horse would not be able to watch for the quicksand. Dernick even runs some of the people that were attacking them into a quicksand pit and lets them die down there, so they can't die down there. So very different than the areas we have been so far. We've been in foresty areas, we've been in plains areas, we've been in towns and cities and things like that, but we haven't yet been to an area like this where it's very much a very difficult terrain to travel, with quicksand, with, harsh terrains to even, take shelter in. They had to build a shelter at one point to save themselves from the wind and the sand. So very, very interesting and very, very different from the places that we've been so far. So it's kind of cool to see that there are these locations in this world as well. So along with the sea monsters beached and dead on the beach, we see now that there are also places that have incredibly harsh terrains that no one can live there, and it's very, very tricky in order to even just get through the pass to travel between different places. And then we also have a city, Cothelmurgos, that is built on top of a mountain with impossibly high walls, and it's really pretty much impossible to penetrate this city from an outside perspective. Of course, Belgariad does find a way in, and there were rumors that was underneath them, but only Relg, someone of the Ulgo, could possibly have made it, so they could get up those caves that are underneath them. So pretty much an impossible city to sneak up on, an impossible city to attack, an impossible city to overrun. It's pretty much an impenetrable city, other than this one method that they end up using and have the one person that can help them do that. So it's also pretty interesting to see that there are cities that were built in this kind of location that are so impenetrable, that are so unique. Most cities, as we know them in our reality, in this reality, are not able to be built up on these huge mountains and be, have the different levels in the city in order to have a prosperous city that people can live in. I mean, it's a mountain. How do they get their farming? Obviously they can have animals up there for eating, but how do they get, a lot of their other types of food and things like that? So we don't actually get to know that kind of perspective. We don't get to know those specific details or to see that enough of the city to know that. But it is definitely very interesting to know that a civilization can be built on the top of this giant mountain and can survive and can, obviously there isn't only problems of being attacked from the outside. Sometimes, there are problems within cities that then lead them to their downfall. But this city has lasted for, years and years and years, thousands and thousands of years, according to Belgariad. It's a very old city. And they are able to survive on the top of this mountain and make it work, can make whatever plants they need to grow, can, be on watch to make sure that they don't let anybody sneak up on them, and can be so impenetrable. So super interesting city, super interesting locations, super interesting terrains that they've been passing through, super interesting new details about these monsters and these things that do exist in this world, or at one time existed in this world, and for whatever reason it became extinct. So super interesting. I really like to see and to draw attention to the more things that we learn about this world and the more things that we find that are interesting. So let me know. I'd love to hear if you loved any of these elements, if there's anything that I've missed that you think, oh, that was super cool, and I think that that's another section of world building. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on this world as we know it at this point. Whether it's from these chapters or for previous chapters and previous books, let me know how you like David Eddings' world building and how he incorporates this world that he has brought to life in these books. Now let's go ahead and take some time to look at our transition between this book and the next book, as we usually do when transitioning to the next book. So first, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about our current setup of where we are right now. and what we've kind of got in place going into this next book. So first things first is at the very end of this book, we have recovered the orb. So one main mission down, the orb was very, very important. We did not want it to reach Torak, and we did not want it to be used to resurrect him. Of course, it seems a little bit too easy that he wouldn't be resurrected, so we'll see if that happens now or not. But we have at least gotten a step up on the bad guys and the fact that we have taken it back from them. So at the end of book 3, where it means we're over halfway through this story, and we have recovered the orb. And Garon, for that one moment with his hand, the little mark on his hand, really wanted him to grab the orb and to take it. They didn't let him, which I think is a little bit surprising. You would think that if anybody was safe to grab the orb, it would be Garon, but maybe he's not yet in the place that he can be safe with it. It's hard to say. But we have at least recovered it and recovered the boy from the evil side, I guess. So we're gonna find out if what I guessed last time is true and that he will become the new Gorum or not. But that is what we will see in this next book. We have that Garon is definitely being shown as the important person here, that he is the person who is meant to save the world, and Garon is clearly knows about it. He understands it, that is his goal. He doesn't quite understand why it's him, and he's not really like in-depth thinking about it, but he is definitely aware that he is the important person in this whole thing. He doesn't still know, I don't think, that he is a son of Riva, but he does understand that he is an essential part of this whole thing and that he has his part to play in the future. It does seem like we have all of our characters for this prophecy, or at least a lot of them. A lot of the players that are meant to be in their group or in their party have come about. Though we did have Kutschik, I always have a hard time with that name, say about the bowman, and we did lose our bowman. So is he going to come back or not? That's something that's going to be important to know, is will he be rejoining the party anytime soon? Yes, but it seems like we have pretty much, hopefully, all our characters. It seems like, or at least most of them. We have quite a few people banded together in this group. So we're going to see how that goes. And then we have, backing up just a second, I do want to say we're not really clear as to why we need all these people. That is another thing that's kind of in my head, is that we don't yet know why all of these people are 100% necessary, only that they are. And that is why Belgariad was so worried about Silk being killed, and that's why, Tuchik wanted to kill Sinedra, based on what he was saying, is that he was really hoping to be able to kill her and ruin, his side of the prophecy being able to be completed. So, but we're not really sure why these people are necessary. I mean, obviously Garon's supposed to be the main person, so why are the rest of these group necessary? So that's going to be something hopefully we find out in the coming book as well. And last but not least, we do definitely know that the orb is supposed to go to Garon. The boy does have this huge urge to give him the orb and keeps saying errand. So it seems like that might be the only thing that the boy knows how to say. I think it will be very interesting to see what happens with this boy. And we don't really totally know how old he is either, so again, it will be interesting to see how he develops, especially if he is the one that's supposed to become the Gorum or not. We'll find out. Okay, so that's kind of like the information that we have right now, setting up or moving forward from book 3 to book 4, is that's kind of where we're at. So as always, I'd really like to take a look at the covers. I do think it is interesting to kind of see what the covers can maybe tell us about the future book, kind of see what we can see before we actually get there. Sorry, the book is so shiny, it keeps bobbing my light off of it. But we did talk a little bit about this one last time, about how it is red and pink. That was kind of an interesting choice. I do feel like now that we've read it, it kind of is trying to show a more dangerous, bloody time for them, and this is true in the fact of, like, at least especially the Grolems, you know, doing their sacrifices at the end is pretty bloody and pretty dark. So maybe that is why they chose this, especially with this kind of Torak face in the background, that or whatever it is for the Grolems, I believe, is what this is trying to depict. And of course, we always have the map in the background. I think it's super interesting. It always has that map of kind of the places that they're at. It's always hard to see it, kind of, but we do see like the Nicaea at the bottom where we did start out with, and Aldur, the Vale of Aldur, is in the center here. So it is kind of showing a brief little map about where they were in this book. And then we do have the boy who is holding the orb, and currently still is able to, you know, carry around the orb. And Garon here, he's trying to present it to Garon as we kind of suspected. And of course, I suspect that this is Belgariad still, and that was kind of obvious before we transitioned over to this book, and it has kind of been proven that that is probably him. So, yeah, definitely some interesting. We got this little like thing in the map figure or place in the back yet. I'm not totally sure where that would have been, unless that is Kothel Murgos. That's very possible. But yeah, so we've kind of got the main elements from this book are very much clear about what happened in this book. Belgariad had that fight. We've got the Torak symbol in the back where they did go past the Torak sacrifices and stuff like that in the altar. And then they do end up getting the boy who wants to give the orb to Garon. So that was Magician's Gambit. Let's go ahead and take a look at Castle of Wizardry. Now, Castle of Wizardry, just so we can see actually really quick coming up, is definitely a little bit of a bigger book. It's not a huge, much bigger book, but you can definitely see, if I can line it up, that it is a little bit bigger. It definitely feels a little bit heavier in my hand from between both. So that is pretty interesting that it's going to be a little bit of a bigger section of this story. Let me just check to see how many pages. So Magician's Gambit was 307. Castle of Wizardry is 375. So it is almost 100 pages more. I mean, about only 30 pages less than 100 pages more than the previous book. So it is a little bit more weightier, a little bit more going on. Not tons extra, like it's not like a super lot bigger book or anything, but it does definitely have a little bit more going on in this section. So here it is. It's a nice blue color, and then we've got our map color in the back. So definitely a little bit more of a realistic map color. And we've got this nice, pretty bright blue as the main background. So definitely, sorry, if we come back to looking at our side-by-side, this one has the pink, which is a version of red. And so it definitely has much more of a one color vibe to it, monochromatic or whatever, you know. It definitely has its kind of going together, I guess you can say. It doesn't really seem like the red and the pink are highly contrasting. It seems like they go together and it's more of like a one solid thing. This one, on the other hand, with its blue, is definitely much brighter, and with the yellow of the map, it's much more accented that, you know, we've got this bright blue and then we've got this bright yellow, and it really draws attention to what is in this little framed area of the cover. Now, of course, as always, we do have the map in the background, and this is probably, once again, as we've seen the trend is, that it's going to show us, you know, the main area that we're going to be in for this story. So let's see, if we look at it, it is the Isle of the Winds, which we do know is where, you know, Riva is and stuff like that. The Riven Kingdom was there, and we do have a crown here, so that does also make sense. It does seem like maybe Garon is going to be coming into his inheritance, or come into his true status as the royalty of the Riven line. We're going to see if that is correct, if we do actually get that. We have Garon, as we've had on every single cover right here, it seems. In his traditional garb, but then we have this glowing sword here. So, and we do also have this glowing little spot here on his hand. So that is probably either his mark of the orb, or possibly the orb itself, and some kind of mythical sword, it looks like, or that the orb is being, you know, lighting up and empowering the sword. We're gonna find out. But that is pretty interesting. Of course, this could possibly just be a representation of the power of the sword. It might not actually glow in the book. We'll have to find out about that, if it's actually magical or not. Or maybe he uses magic through it. That's always a question as well. And then this person over here looks to me like Sinedra, because it's got the curly red hair that Sinedra has. It definitely, based on her outfit, does not really seem like a Sinedra outfit, does it? Or at least to me it doesn't. Maybe you're like, that definitely seems like Sinedra. But she does have a dagger in her hand. Again, she has that curly red hair, and so that's what makes me believe that that's her. And so she looks like she's got some armor on and a big blue cape. So the blue does match the blue of the sword here. Don't know if that means anything at this point. We're going to find out if it does. But yeah, so it definitely looks like Sinedra's going to be a big part of this, and of course Garon is always a big part of it. And we're going to have maybe him coming into his inheritance, his position as part of being a royal or of the Riven family, and possibly coming back to where he actually is from, which is Riva and the Isle of the Winds. So pretty interesting. We've got a boat a little bit here behind the words. I don't know if you can see it, that little boat. So they're probably gonna be sailing to the Isle, and he's gonna finally recognize who he is, who his past is. He's gonna finally know what's going on and why, you know, he grew up on Falder's farm, but what his true past is. He does know that his parents were killed, but he'll probably, my guess is, find out why, and will be able to take up his spot where he's supposed to be. Now that is my guess based on what is presented in this cover, and we do know from previous experience, just from what we talked about in the last book, as well as previous books, that it does seem like the cover does have some of the significant events depicted on the front, even if we don't know exactly what those events are before we start. So definitely looks pretty good. I do like this cover, I think, better than the previous one. I do like how it's a little bit more of a bright coloring, and it's more of a not quite so monochromatic. It's got the bright blue, and then it's got the yellow and just the little hints of blue in the cover to kind of match the background. I do think it's a little bit more of a fun, easier to look at cover and stuff like that. So yeah, we are gonna see if any of that's correct. I would love to know what you think based on the cover, or if you have a different cover. Let me know what is on your cover and what you think might happen in this book based on that. I would love to hear your thoughts, your opinions. I'd love to know what your hopes and dreams are for this next book, to know what you're hoping will happen, what you're hoping won't happen, what you think might happen, any questions that you want answered, any of that kind of stuff. I would love to hear about it. So please let me know. I'd be so happy to have a discussion with you. Now, last but not least, let's go ahead and go over the nitty-gritty. I've got two different things for the nitty-gritty. First one is that I kind of have noticed this before, but I just really thought about it in these chapters, so I wanted to bring it up with you guys. And that is that I feel like Dernick deserves more quote-to-quote screen time. I feel like he's always been the character where, like, he's there at the beginning, but he doesn't really get enough time. Like, we don't really get to see enough input from him. We see it sometimes here and there, but like Silk and Barak are much more characters that are constantly saying stuff, constantly doing stuff, and we know them really a lot more. And I wish Dernick we had a little bit more going on with him. I think that would be really super nice to see a little bit more of his personality and to know a little bit more about him. So I'm hoping in the future we can get a little bit more about him as well, but we will find out if that is the case or not. And the second one I think is interesting is that Belgariad makes a specific comment about how the child that is carrying the orb is not necessarily like a pure child. He is a completely innocent child. And how that is so hard to do, and that not only is innocent different than pure? But innocent is super hard in order to get there. So very interesting that they were that any person that is on the side of Torek could raise a child. And even just, I feel like it'd be very hard even as a good person to raise a child that is completely innocent, completely unaware of the things of the world, and has no ambition, no expectations, no thoughts that anybody could hurt them or could be a bad person. So I think that's super, super interesting, and I want to understand what kind of person a child like that will end up being from that origin, which again, what makes me want to understand exactly how old they are, because I feel like the older and more experienced the child becomes, the harder it is to keep them completely innocent. So very interesting to me that that distinction was made. It's not someone or a child that is just a pure child. It is a child that is completely innocent of this world and has no idea of what's going on in this world. And we definitely have already seen that in the fact that the child has no recognition of what's going on between Belgariad and Chutrik. No idea like that anyone would be to harm him, that any motivations that they're doing or anything that they're doing is considered bad or dangerous. Really just doesn't seem to understand anything that's going on around him. So super, super interesting. Alright, so that's all I have for this section today. Hopefully you enjoyed and you're ready to move on to book 4. Yeah, I guess let me know if you have any comments, any questions, any concerns, anything at all. Go ahead and let me know down below. Or you're also welcome to let me know on Facebook. That will be facebook.com/fantasyfiction1. You're also welcome to contact me on Twitter if that's better for you, which is @fantasyfiction1. You're welcome to check out the Discord. We have several people over there chatting and talking away about different fantasy things, different books that we talk about on here, fun things, more serious things, whatever you'd like to chat about, we have it over there at the Discord, and we would love to see you there and love to have you chatting with us. Your link for that will be down below, and we are hoping to see you then. You are also welcome to check out more content from me from the blog fantasyfictionfanatics.net. I've got book reviews, book recommendations over there. I've got different fanatic deliberations over there where I just talk about different things for fantasy or writing. I've got a couple of personal ones about me and my journey with fantasy fiction and reading, and as well as writing and other things like that. So if you want more content from me, go ahead and check over there. Hopefully you can find something that you would enjoy. Of course, you're also welcome to let me know of any content you want on there or here on the channel. I would love to hear about it and to provide it for you. Yeah, I guess that's going to be it for today, and I will see you in the next class. Bye.